Hello, and thank you for joining us in the Salon. I'm Adam Smith. I'm delighted to be your host again for today. Don't worry, I'm only a few more weeks and you'll get somebody else. And we're here today to explore the topic of returning to research after a career break. Before we even get going, I'm gonna jump in and say that Loukia is having some technical difficulties, but I didn't want to keep everybody waiting. Can you hear us now, Loukia? No. So we're just gonna carry on regardless, and we'll deal with this issue as it arises. So if you're new to the Salon, let me quickly explain the format. We start with a 30-minute live stream that includes 2 talks from brilliant speakers, each of whom have a unique take on this topic. And then we have a little discussion. I'll put some questions to them. And then for the last 30 minutes or so, or less, we have a chat in the chat space. That's assuming there's enough people here live to chat to. We've got a pretty low attendance today, but I know so many of you will be watching on catch up. So if you are watching on catch up and you didn't have a chance to get your question answered, or you've got any important points to make on this topic, do post them in the comments below. And our guests are community members too, so they'll be able to play catch up. So anyway, let's get on with some introductions. Our 2 speakers today are Loukia Katsouri and Claire Potter. Hi, both of you.
Hi.
Claire can't hear it. This is going to be an interesting one. If Loukia can't hear us at all, we're going to participate in the chat in that way. So Loukia studies molecular mechanisms of tau propagation at an Alzheimer's disease at UCL, and aims to understand how the presence of tau is affecting the spread and severity of the disease. She has her own experiences of taking a career break, and Loukia has some valuable insights to share as well. Claire, let's see if I've got your bio right, is a specialty trainee in general and adult old age psychiatry and an ICART fellow at Queen's University Belfast, and also a Fulbright student awardee. Claire graduated from Queen's University Belfast in 2013, entered psychiatry training in 2015 and obtained her MRC Psych, congratulations, in 2017, and had a career break in 2022, and lived through the challenges of that and is now back at work, as we can see from your background. So to set the scene, returning to research after a career break, recognizing that this is often after somebody's started a family or had a period of problems in the family or caring for somebody else, and that can present its unique set of challenges. I mean, that's not, of course, the only way. We know that some people take a break out to go into industry or to try another profession and then want to come back again as well and probably face the same kinds of challenges. So reconnecting with networks and things like that is a good way to stay up to date with developments. But what's it really like coming back? How do you do it? Should you do it? And are there things that can make the process easier? I know that we've got somebody blogging for us at the moment who's been writing through their period of pregnancy and maternity leave, and is just coming back as well. So if that's of interest to you, we've also got some blogs there that are worth reading. But for now, given Claire is here and we can hear Claire and Claire can see us. Hi, Claire. I'm going to let
your mic come on there, Loukia. Is that? Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Oh, brilliant.
I don't know if it's through the one in the top left-hand corner or the one in the bottom right. I'm not sure. Anyway, Claire, I'm going to let you go first. So we'll turn our cameras and mics off.
Great.
Might be worrying, but we'll let you do it, and you've got your 10 minutes start now.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Adam. So, no, thank you. And I think this is such a great idea. And just to have that ability to connect with people who are similar research interests, but potentially at a similar stage to you. So this particular talk about career breaks appealed to me to kind of contribute to, because my career break, I actually think, has added value to my research, and certainly in terms of prioritization and what I wanted to get out of my research time, which maybe, beforehand I didn't have. So it's been a very positive experience for me. So as Adam said a bit in my bio there, I'm a clinician by training. So I graduated from Queen's University Belfast in 2013 and then went on into old age psychiatry and have been working in that then since 2015. But was always interested in research and wanted to explore opportunities to do academic training. So that first then took up as an academic clinical fellow, and then as a time out of training for a PhD, so full-time PhD, and I started my PhD in 2020. So during my career to date, I've had a couple of different career breaks. So I had a maternity leave in 2022. My daughter was born in July 22. So that's obviously quite a substantial career break for that. But there have been things that I've learned from kind of different pauses or different redirections in my research that is caused by a change in a career or by a break in what a traditional PhD time was spent. So the first of that was I had a clinical redeployment during the COVID pandemic. So I had to stop all academic activity at that time, and I was returned back to the wards full time to obviously meet that clinical need. So there was that pause. Then the career break for maternity leave in 2022, which was planned. And then it was a part of my PhD, but it was something that I had not had planned initially to do, but I got the opportunity and was successful in getting a Fulbright Award, which is an overseas fellowship. So I spent 4 months in the States from last summer. So that then I ended up actually coming back from my maternity leave in order to take up that award. So I was hoping then to just talk a bit about today about actually, returning back to your career after even a time overseas or in a fellowship. So I think the big thing to take away, I hope, for people and from my own perspective, is that life can happen, and life happens, and we can be thrown different opportunities and different challenges. So I think as I have got older and a bit more experience, you kind of learn to kind of roll with that, but anticipate that linear journey from A to B just isn't the case, and we're far more likely to have different experiences and different journeys on our research path. But as I said, that doesn't always have to be a negative experience. It can throw up new opportunities for you, new chances to work with people, new networks and connections that you wouldn't have done previously. So I think it could be really rewarding. So one of the things to think about, so life can happen, things unexpectedly or urgently could happen, such as ill health or carrying responsibilities or concerns for dependents. But where possible, if you know that you're planning to have a career break for whatever reason, and for me that was for maternity leave, the more proactive you can be before you go off is best. So where I was with my research, it was actually quite a natural end of one of my chapters. So it wasn't planned that way, but it was quite a nice way to finish things off. But in terms of the actual day-to-day research that I was doing, I had started a couple of weeks before I went off, started building little breadcrumbs for myself, so that this is my thought process for doing X experiment over Y, and this is the direction that we're thinking of taking this project whenever you return. And your future self really thanks you for this, because it means then when you're coming back, you have those little tidbits to kind of pick up on and refresh yourself to build on. I think as well, being proactive and anticipating what would happen during a career break is really important for in terms of some of the admin that's involved. So making sure that your funders are aware that you're taking a career break, and also then potential anticipated return date. If your institution, so if you're a student, that you take that pause in your PhD time, so that all the paperwork is completed for that, and then also in terms of the likes of HR, that you're getting all the entitlement that and financial support, so that your maternity leave pay is sorted for you, and also then if there's any cares pay or sick pay that's required as well. Because what you really don't want to be doing is, if you are on a career break and you have that responsibility, you don't want to then have to be distracted by a lot of these very heavy administrative tasks. So if you can be proactive in that, that certainly alleviates a lot of the stress and worry about that too. There can be some challenges when you take a career break. There's always the concern that things will progress, will get ahead of you. The literature will massively change over the time that you're off. New experiments, new ways of doing things will happen. But I think if you can appreciate the bigger picture, that's the case for everyone. Things are moving so rapidly within kind of the dementia landscape that we're all having to kind of make sure that we're up to date with the kind of the current literature, the current methods, the best practices. So the fact that you're on a career break doesn't mean that stops. So depending on your own interest, you may want to keep in touch with some things. What I found helpful was setting up different Google alerts and PubMed alerts and different hashtags trending. And I was able to then siphon all of those information off into different folders. And that meant if there was a time whenever I was off and I wanted to dip in and see what was happening, that I had like a collection of papers there that I could read, or different events that I could follow. There are potentially some times that you may want to be submitting abstracts or grants whilst you're off. So again, being organised is very good, because you know then when are the deadlines for these, and you can have time to chat with your family or with your colleagues about, is there somebody else that could submit that on your behalf? Or if it's for a personal grant, for example, and that needs your input, you can do a lot of the heavy lifting before you go off. So they were some of the kind of key tips that I'd kind of wanted to bring across. Thinking then back about what it was for me like coming back then. So again, I got notification that I had got the Fulbright Award whilst I was in the final stages before going off on maternity leave. And the way that award worked was that I had to take it up within the next academic year because of the funding. So it meant I actually had to cut my maternity leave a bit shorter than I had initially had planned. And I had lots of discussions with family and with supervisors and colleagues about that. But it was just such a fantastic opportunity to take up. And I think the universities are recognising now that people may have additional requirements and additional dependence. So there's a lot of change within the university to support families and careers whilst you have a young family. And within Queen's University Belfast, we would have what's called, it's a very common thing now, shared parental leave. So it meant that I was actually able to then share my maternity leave entitlement with my husband. And he's not American, not in an institution, but his company has a similar scheme. So it meant that he was able to take then the rest of my maternity leave entitlement, and he was able to take the time that we spent in America off as a career break himself. So that was just an unbelievable opportunity for our family to have that time over in the States as well. So, but it did come with challenges, because not only was I coming back from maternity leave, I was coming back immediately going away to America with collaborators that I had known and had worked with previously, but just the challenges of being away from family and settling in. So things that helped me certainly as I was immediately transitioning back from 8 months off was that I had arranged more regular meetings with my supervisors and to keep in contact and to have that supervision as well, and then getting to really kind of involve myself with the team. So going to all the journal club meetings and lab meetings as well, to really kind of get the most of the experience. So then I had another transition then whenever I came back to Queen's, but again, the universities are very supportive of that, so when you transition back, you don't have as much teaching responsibilities, and so it's a really big, important time for transition. But the priority is just kind of getting that balance right, finding out what routine works for you and your family, around childcare arrangements, in my example, and finding then the best way. But you ultimately know the best way that you work, so it's about finding adapting that to what will serve you best. But my kind of key takeaways, just to finish up my 10 minutes, is just say that life happens. So we all have to adapt to some changes in what our anticipated career paths may be. but it's not always a negative thing. And there could be some great opportunities, provided you're given the right support and seek out the right support, to not only improve personal development, but also professional opportunities, and improve your research as well. So that's my tidbit. Again, I'm on the community, so very welcome for anybody to reach out and contact me if they want any particular advice. But hope we'll have a good discussion later.
Thanks, Claire. That was brilliant, and I mean, well done on managing it. So do you work full time now?
Yeah, so I've finished and now in an academic clinical lecture job. So I'm 50% in the trust and then 50% academic. So I suppose every other day I'm coming back from a different career, and just it's that adaptability of kind of what's on today's agenda, and you just learn to roll with the punches, because again, we came back, and my child went into nursery crash, and then of course got sick immediately. So you've had some of these new challenges to face, but I think if you have your supportive team, and that's where a role of like some mentorships are really, really helpful, because you can have people then, and they've gone through similar experiences or going through that as well, but you have people then that can give you advice or give you support. But the key for me is being organised, so know where deadlines are and think ahead in time, and then there's always flexibility then around that with the right team around you.
I suppose, I mean, as you say, everybody's circumstances are particularly unique. I guess returning to work after starting a family means that I mean, not only are you coming to terms with the trauma you've just gone through, which is, that whole experience, which I guess is slightly traumatic. Well, not slightly, very traumatic. I'm going to show up about that. But you've got the kind of, you've got to sort out childcare, and you've got suddenly extra expenses that you didn't have before, and all those things. I guess it's slightly different if you're returning after a period of caring for somebody that's ended. Particularly, obviously, you haven't got that added complication of childcare to sort out, but it might not be that your caring has ended. It could just be that the circumstances have changed, and easing back in can be quite difficult. How do you manage? I mean, are there expectations put on you that you're just going to pick up where you left off, particularly from the people working around you? How do you cope with that?
I think a lot of that can come from yourself. You have this expectation that you were functioning at that high level, very, very focused on your research, and particularly something like a PhD or an individual grant, where it's very much self-directed. So I was coming back knowing that nothing had been done in my absence, because it's my own personal project. So there is certainly a lot of pressure that you can fall victim to of putting on yourself. But I think and I hope then that times are changing, in that then our senior PIs in our institutions, our funders, are becoming more aware, and that people do have these requirements, that people take career breaks, and even then when they return to work, some people may not return to work full time. They may adjust their hours, or work compressed hours, but even that the headspace is not there. I remember somebody saying to me that it can take 18 months to function at the level that you were at before a maternity leave, and I totally appreciate that. But I think looking at what the institution offers, so that would be, kind of stepping back from any teaching commitments, for we have in Queen's the first 6 months when you return back from a maternity leave or a career break. Increased contact with supervisors as well, but it hopefully is then the changing culture. So Queen's, I've got the Gold Athena Swan Award, so it recognises kind of the contributions kind of for gender equality, and that's kind of for all caring responsibilities. But be kind to yourself. For whatever reason you have been off, you may not be running back at the same level, but that's okay, because actually what I found since I've come back is that my time whenever I am in work is more productive, because I know I have to finish at a certain time to go pick up my daughter from childcare, or the late nights, and I probably have a healthier way of working, in the fact that maybe if I had a paper that I was writing or a grant that was due, I just would have slogged it out and got it done. Whereas now I know that that's not sustainable, because I have the routines of family life. So I've probably developed more helpful and healthy work habits around too, which then makes you more productive as well. So that certainly helps about being transition. And then that's saying, well, how you work best. So for me, I work best in the morning. And thankfully, my child's a good sleeper. So if there are deadlines, I would get up in the morning and do things so that I can prioritize the family time in the evenings.
That's what I was going to say. I interviewed Tamrin Lashley and Gemma Lace Costigan last year for a special series we did on kind of managing family life and careers, which is slightly different but in a related topic. And both of those seem to have become very productive morning people. That they kind of really enjoyed getting up when the house was still quiet and doing things in the mornings that they never would have done before.
Yes, yeah.
Their top tip was always as well is you just get on with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that's easier to say than necessarily do, but you make it work. And
I
that
think
self-belief that you can do it.
and certainly that career breaks for family reasons, care and responsibilities, it gives perspective to things. So prior to that, you could have the naive sense that the worst thing that could happen to me was that I got a rejection in a paper I'd submitted or something. Whereas then when you start to have family, or if there's different things that happen in your life, that's suddenly not the case, and work is part of your life, not your whole life. So I've that has been very, very helpful too, because it you
Gives you
can
that
have the
bigger
tendency,
perspective.
particularly as an early career researcher, that you just have to work, and you're on the kind of hamster wheel going and going.
Absolutely.
But actually, that wee bit of time away, I came back to my research much more enthusiastic, and I had time to kind of reflect on some thoughts and ideas and directions I wanted to take it, and directions I want to take my career. Because a lot of the times when you're an ECR, you're saying yes to everything, and you get burdened with a lot of things that maybe actually aren't really something that you're going to be interested in long term. But when you come back from a career break and you don't have the time or capacity to say yes to all of those things, it makes you much more focused on following the things that you're interested in, and that will serve you in your career.
Yeah,
So that's helpful too.
absolutely. And I guess sure, it is easier if you've got time to plan ahead, I guess, in so much as you can be a little bit more strategic in terms of, we know everybody's, very few academics have got permanent jobs, and thinking about how your career break fits into your grants and your structures, and being quite methodical or
Yes, yeah.
engineered in planning that. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking and go. I'm going to let Loukia. I'm going to let
Yeah,
you
well,
do your.
just wanted to say, I suppose that was the point I wanted to make as well, is that my plan even changed whenever I was on my maternity leave. I came back a lot sooner than I had anticipated. So there's always the option to change things as well. So
I think Gemma did the same thing. I think tying it up with, if you had lecturing responsibilities, tying it up with term time. So actually, you slightly adjusted maternity leave to fit around work, which isn't
yeah,
ideal, but can help, I guess. And then if you can bank that and take it later as
yeah,
leave.
yeah.
Loukia, let's let you do your bit. Sorry, thank you very much for waiting, and you can hear us now. We can see
Yep.
you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah.
That looks like
Okay.
Queen Square. Is that Queen Square behind you?
No, actually, I'm at the Sainsbury Welcome Center.
Okay, very nice.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll let you. Are you using slides?
I have some slides.
Yep,
I
you can share your
them up.
screen if you want. Well,
Yeah.
this could be tricky, shouldn't it? Should we see if this works?
Uh,
While Lucky is working out how to share slides, I have some stats. Shall I read out? I like to produce some stats in advance. Here's a stat. A survey conducted by the Wellcome Trust in 2020 found that approximately 41% of women and 23% of men in academia reported taking career breaks of 6 months or longer in their careers. So that's more men than I was expecting, actually, at 23%. The most common reasons were maternity or paternity leave, caring responsibilities, and personal health. I guess we haven't actually talked about that, but returning to work after personal health challenges is another thing, which is probably a whole separate approach again about how you phase that and how you mentally condition yourself. Anyway, that's an interesting start for you. I'll turn my camera over to you, Loukia.
Great. Thank you so much. So, who am I? I was born in Cyprus. I studied biology at the University of Athens in Greece. I graduated in 2004. Went on to do a PhD also in Athens in a newly founded research institute that was also had its own challenges. I'm saying I walked into a lab with empty benches and I had to set up everything from scratch, another life lesson. I did my first postdoc at Imperial College London between 2010 and 2014. I did my second postdoc at the MRC LMS between 2014 and 2015. And then I decided to switch towards industry. So I tried my luck working as a neuronal cell biologist at the UK Drug Discovery Institute in Oxford between 2016 and 2017, where I decided that pharma is not for me. And I joined John O'Keefe's lab at UCL in 2018. So I've had my back and forth with research. So the timeline of my career break, it's basically COVID hits in 2020. The lab was closed between March and July 2020. I could still do some behavioral experiments because I had some really old animals that I convinced the dean that I had to do them. But not much was done until we went back full time in autumn 2020. Then I had a health issue that kept me out of the lab all of October 2020. Went back in the lab in November, just on time for the second lockdown. And then I did some experiments during November, December, and then third lockdown happened in January, where I discovered that I was pregnant and I was shielding between January and March because it was a scary time, and being on first trimester, not being able to get any vaccination basically made me think of all the research on babies and in utero COVID infection. So I decided to just work from home for a few months until the first trimester passed. So then I went back in the lab and I was working between April and August 2021, non-stop trying to collect as much data as possible, thinking that perhaps when I go on maternity leave, I would be able to do some work and do some analysis, and also to be able to come back to a project after my maternity leave. So everything didn't work out as I planned. So when I got back, I went back into the lab part-time in April 2020 because I had a very clingy baby that refused to take the bottle. So I had this challenge. I needed to feed him myself. So I spoke with my boss and he said, take as much time as you leave, come back part-time. So my husband could also look after him in the mornings and he would go to the nursery in the afternoons. So I was only in the lab for like a briefly 3-4 hours period that would allow me to just supervise people pretty much. So yeah, as I mentioned, I had a lot of support from my boss. And in June 2022, our son went to a childminder full time, and she was very helpful in transitioning him to solid foods and bottles. So that allowed me to be able to go back in the lab full time. So I had a PhD student that had just started when I was when I was halfway through my pregnancy, and then when I went on maternity leave, I was supervising her. But then when I came back, there was a lot of challenge in terms of needing to work on her project. So I spent most of the summer and autumn of 22 working with her, supervising her. So it was my priority to make sure that she's on board for passing her upgrade and all of this. So I managed to get back to my project in January 2023, so 16 months after I stopped pretty much. And I finished with the data collection in December 2023. And then I collected some more data for another project between January 2024 and July. And the reason I did that is because the mice were of a certain age, so they had to be done between January and July. So I wish I could take some time to analyze stuff as they come, but then again, you have to be proactive and do things when you have to do them, and then take a step back and move on to the next project or the analysis. So where I am now, I have a flexible work pattern that I have agreed with my boss, which means that I can work from home sometimes or be in the lab. I'm currently analyzing data, which is also another challenge because I'm a very much hands-on person and I prefer running experiments in the lab than actually doing analysis. So this is another thing that I have to teach myself, to sit down for many hours and just analyze things. I've started attending conferences again, which I haven't done since before COVID. I think my first conference was the Alzheimer's Research UK in Manchester after COVID and maternity leave, and that was also really nice to be able to reconnect with the community, which you kind of get isolated during your maternity leave. And then I have a very supportive husband who's working part-time, so he can do all of the drop-offs and pickups for our son. He is making sure that there's food in the house. I get more time to do what I need to do in the lab because I'm at a very critical stage that I need to get papers out and work towards achieving my goal, which is to have my own group one day. So the problems are pretty much along what Claire said, that your time is very limited. You go back from maternity leave and you think that you have all the time in the world, and very quickly you realize that no, you can barely work between 9 and 5 because you have to go back and to a sick child or to help, or you want to spend time with your family. There's a lot of lack of sleep, so I got a very bad sleeper. He wakes up at 6 and he doesn't go to bed until 9:30, 10. So that's exhausting. So I have to work on basically an insomniac state most of the time. There's a lot of stress coming from work pressure, from myself and from my family. And there's also no downtime. In the past, you would be able to go home and relax, unwind, do some things. But right now, you just can't do that. You have a toddler at home that wants your full attention. So the take-home message is you need a support network and flexibility at work to be able to balance returning to work after parental leave and to be able to work in a stress-free environment. I think this is the most important thing. And that's, as it was previously mentioned, you need to be able to be flexible yourself and rearrange things and, just take each day as it comes and not panic about, I haven't published a first author paper in the last 4 years, but you have done something, you have produced something that is worthwhile. So in essence, you are who you are because of what you have achieved so far. And it's not just our work achievements that define us, it's also being a good parent, a good friend, a good, partner, and all of these things. So I will stop sharing right now. So we can go back to.
Thank you so much. You've hit the nail on the head that came up. So I posted some links in the comments there to this series we did called Work-Life Harmony last year.
Yeah.
And when chatting to Gemma and chatting to Tamrin and somebody else as well, whose name suddenly jumped out of my head, to Lavisha. In each case, that whole support network came up, which I know is great if you've got it. If you don't have it, I would imagine it makes life much harder, particularly if you haven't got family around you as well. But having a partner who picks up their share of things too has got to be important. So what does a typical, talk me through? So I realize that this changes over time as well as you're, both of you returned after a career break from having children. As your children get older, things change. But when you both went back to work, what was a day like, Loukia? Talk me through your kind of average week.
So when I got back, I was basically dropped into a bazillion meetings because I was running a small group in John O'Keefe's lab. So there were lots of
Nobel Prize winning
Yeah.
O'Keefe, so no pressure either.
No. So yeah, there were a lot of things happening. So I remember having meetings where I had the baby asleep on me, and you could see a small hand going up the screen because I just had to keep on going for some meetings. So when I went back, it was mostly meetings and supervision. Now I managed to get a better balance, and I think I have achieved that about, I don't know, almost 2 years after I returned to work after my maternity. So now I usually come in the lab between 9 and 9:30 because it's quiet. There's not many people around, so I can work a bit. Then I started going to Pilates instead of a lunch break because I had a lot of back issues after my pregnancy. So I thought now's the time to fix it. So I try to do that, and it actually helps me. I come back with a refreshed mind, and it's kind of like, okay, let's start again. So you go for the second part of the day. So
So just to throw that in there, exercise.
It helps.
Does that ring true with you as well, Claire?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think even for you, like, not to lose your identity, if you come back from a caring, change in that and your caring responsibility, and you mentioned there, Luke, having that no downtime, if you have additional responsibilities outside of work, you can start to lose a bit of yourself in that. So having those healthy behaviors, exercise, meeting with friends, time away from those responsibilities is really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, please do carry on.
Yeah, so then in the afternoon, I usually would do some analysis, or I was running experiments until very recently, so I would plan my experiments around exercise. I would do, for example, I had a 3 hours break between training and testing. When I'm doing behavioral experiments with mice, I would do them in the morning. Then within those downtime, I would go exercise and then come back. And then usually I leave around 5:30 to get home for 6:15. We have all dinner together. Then I have to give a bath to my son, and then try to put him to sleep. Which
sounds like he's
yeah. It's like there's a sleep session of like the 18 months, and there's the 3 years old, and I think I'm right there. So yeah.
And so during that time, does your husband do all the nursery pick up, drop off? And you mentioned he's part time, so he also does some of the.
He does a lot. Yeah. He cooks. He bakes, which is great. So
we often don't talk about this, I think, but how much pressure does money put on this? It's come up because Emily's talked about this through her blogs, talking about maternity leave and trying to, because this is often a time in your life when you're thinking, God, I need more space. Our house isn't big enough, or I'm going to have to take a salary cut because I'm going back down to part-time, and then you've got childcare. How much pressure does the financial side of things, and how do you cope with that? Claire, maybe I'll come to you first on that.
Yeah, it's a massive consideration, so depending on what your maternity leave entitlement is or parental leave entitlement, that may dictate for some people how long they take off. So some people may only be able to afford to take off whilst they're getting pay. Certainly whenever we went to the States, my statutory entitlement had ended, so it was unpaid at that point, so we were as a family surviving on one income at that time, with the extra costs of being in the States and sustaining that too. So that is a massive thing. And then the price of childcare as well. So my career is important to me, I think, and then I think it's important my child, to see me out working and things. So I always knew I wanted to return to a career. But then you're paying a second mortgage to your creche. So yes, so there's sacrifices there. And then for me, again, to kind of be kind to myself and help with my transition, I came off my clinical on-call rota. So I had lost,
which is that's where you earn the money as well, isn't it?
Exactly. So you're paying more with less too. So it certainly comes, that is challenging, and then but that's where I think you just try and make it work best for your family as well, and getting that support and getting that village
Did either of you find any, have you got any secret kind of, not secret, but kind of cunning ways you kind of came up with? Any sneaky things to help with the money side of things that other people might not know about? Did you find
live close to your parents?
Free childcare, yeah.
Yeah, so we're very lucky. We both sets of grandparents, and they help with childcare as well. But yes, so I know for a lot of friends and colleagues, it didn't make financial sense for them to return to work full time. So I have a lot of friends who have taken longer career breaks until their children are in primary school age.
Which of course we could talk about that. I guess the circumstances change if you've had 8 months off, or a year off, or if you've had 2 years off, you might be coming back and looking for a job. So I know things like the Daphne Jackson Trust are a charity in the UK that funds researchers and partners with the likes of Alzheimer's Society and things to provide career grants specifically and help you get back in touch with labs should you need funding to find a job as well. So it's worth keeping an eye on those. They do those about twice a year.
Too. I think the conferences we see a lot more now, so they're breastfeeding friendly, they have creches or childcare arrangements in some of the big conferences now. So there is that opportunity, if you are presenting or delivering work at them, that you can, and have a young family, you can bring them along too. But and the universities themselves, so it doesn't work particularly for my family just because where we live, but university has a creche and childcare arrangements that are definitely competitive to some of the private arrangements. So that's an option too. And then I think, Loukia, you mentioned too, just being very honest with kind of your colleagues and supervisors, and seeing if then a flexible arrangement can work out better. So for me, on a Tuesday I would start a bit later because I'm able to drop my daughter off at my parents' house, which means then that's a day we don't have to pay for. So that definitely helps too.
Did you have anything to add to that, Loukia?
Yeah, so for me it was also because it was COVID when I had my son, and I had to return back. I couldn't take the statutory leave, and UCL unfortunately is only giving 18 weeks. But I was able to get 6 months paid maternity leave because of the holidays that I accumulated in the previous year. So I looked around. So originally my son went to a nursery half day. That was very expensive, and also they weren't looking after him really well because he was very young when he went. So we ended up going to a childminder. And actually the relationship between the childminder and my son is one of a grandmother with a grandchild. She was lovely, and childminders are cheaper than nurseries. I went and I saw 7-8 different childminders, and I picked the one that we clicked. And he stayed there for more than 2 years. We just switched him now to a nursery for the social aspects because he's 3 now. But I recommend to people to look into childminders because they're actually super nice. Your child will have a lot of one-to-one. They're minding also other children that could be of the same age or different age, and it's nice because they grow up as siblings, and they have different interactions. So this is another solution that is cheaper than a nursery. And then when they reach 3 years old, it becomes cheaper because of the tax-free childcare and the government's 30 hours. So
in the UK, yeah,
exactly. Then it's easier, but still, like Claire mentioned, you're paying a second mortgage and you're just burning money.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important that we talk about these things more, and also as well, don't be too don't be. I think when it comes to financial things, or kind of keeping awake at night and mental health, we don't talk about those issues enough, and everybody just plows on, and you kind of suffer in silence to some extent. And I think talking about it helps, because also as well, it's the only way we're going to get things better. I think this is one of the great things I've loved about Emily Spencer's blogs, who's written for us during this, because I think also as well, you can forget what it was like, 3 years ago. And I've loved that she's been writing about these things as they've happened and talking about, and I had no idea, for example, if you're a PhD student, the free childcare you just mentioned there, if you're a PhD student, you don't qualify for that because you're a student, you're not an employee. And I had no idea. That was the case. That seems ridiculous that you don't even get. So I think talking to your institution, looking on the government websites, wherever in the world you are, asking colleagues, don't be afraid to talk about these things. Even in the likes of our community, we've got those career spaces for different career stages. If you're going through this right now, you're thinking about returning to work, you're about to go on maternity leave, you're coming back from maternity leave, or you've had a period of ill health, post your questions in there, because I think lots of people have got information that they could
But I think also, just to mention that the childcare price in the UK, and especially in London, we're talking about over 2,000 right now for an under 2-year-old, is forbidding for many people to have a bigger family. And also we're losing good postdocs. We're losing, so one of my colleagues had twins, so he said, I just can't do it. So he's moving back to Germany. He found position, and we're losing a very determined individual who's extremely smart. And there's no support in the UK.
So if you're watching this now and you're a research funder, whether you're in government or in a third sector organization or a charity, go back and have a look at those policies you have right now that go with your funding, and really do consider how you support people in their returning to work and in their managing that kind of family life and a career, and make sure that even that the policies you've got are actually fair and that you're doing, because you can say, oh yeah, we've already got support for that, and then you find that actually you don't really follow them, or we're not using them. I've got a whole bunch of questions here that we've not really got to, and so let's go through and let me pick something out of my questions. I think you already touched on this about your taking a career break, change your perspective on the field, and you've talked to that very well. Do you think it's had a long-term impact on your career, you're taking time out? Loukia, you go first.
Definitely. I think, especially because my maternity was combined with COVID, I effectively had almost more than 2 years out between lockdowns and things. So I could do some experiments, but not proper experiments. And it really hurt me because I was at a point that I was eligible for many early career awards and grants. And then I came back as a middle career. This is why I put all of my stages. So, but having that time off really hurt me in terms of output, in terms of teaching, all of that. And it's kind of like you're in full speed, and then someone just stops you abruptly, and then you're just trying to pick up your pieces.
I've got another stat on that. Yeah. Studies have shown that researchers who take a career break, especially women, often experience a temporary drop in research output. A published article in Nature in 2018 indicated that women in academic experience a significant reduction in their productivity after maternity leave, with a drop of 17% in publications. I mean, it's no surprise, is it? I mean, you've not been working on those things, but
I think in terms of then the challenges that poses is then if your success is only measured in terms of outputs, and traditionally in academic model that's how it was, and your ability to go for promotions or grants, and the first thing that was asked was your academic outputs. I think we're starting to see a change in that. And some grants are put in, you can enter paragraphs on career breaks and things.
We've got a whole Salon session on building your narrative CV in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
Have a look in the planner, take a look, sign up for that.
Exactly, because that's where I suppose I try and challenge the view, because actually then I think the career break, whilst certainly delaying outputs going out and putting another year on the clock, in terms of giving me focus, direction, where I want my career, it has helped then. So so whereas if you only are measuring in terms of time spent doing something or outputs generated from projects, a career break is seen negatively. So it definitely, I'm not underestimating the challenge it presents, but it could give a great opportunity for growth as well.
Yeah. What do you, I suppose also as well, one of the, I mean, tell me if you disagree with this view. So after interviewing Tamrin and Gemma, both of those started their families quite early on in their career, which I know is, different in society and different, different parts of the world as to when people start families. Obviously, we've kind of gone down a rabbit hole of thinking about this, about returning and maternity leave and things like that, which I know if you're watching, I'm sorry. And that's not for you. But one thing I came up with the idea that actually, I mean, they both said that there is no good time. There's no better time in your career to do this. I actually came away with the view that actually doing it quite early on in your career is probably quite beneficial, actually, because nobody really minds so much if you have that gap in your year early on in your career. And then at the time when you are starting to think about taking up more leadership roles or writing more grants, or there's an expectation that you'll be more productive in publications and things, by which time your children are at school, potentially, which it helped. So this isn't say away, go away and start your family now. but I don't know if you have a view on that.
I agree, because I had my child on my third postdoc, and like I said, I was quite older compared to what I would have done if I didn't do research. And the reason I delayed it was because of my career, because of how expensive childcare was. So it's always like, let's wait another year. So I think definitely it has a huge impact. And I'm comparing myself to another colleague that she's about 9 years younger than me, and she's an earlier career stage. So it's definitely easier if you have your family earlier, because then you have more stamina as well. And exactly,
You're going to complain about your back again.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but I think I'd echo that in the sense that the biggest challenge for me going on a career break and then coming back was all the administrative tasks around that, about making sure all the forms were filled in correctly and the university and my funders knew. And I think then if you were, a lot more senior or even, PI, you would have a lot more of that admin responsibility and a lot more students that you were supervising, and that people that really needed you to make decisions that may not be that easy to kind of deflect or kind of redirect to other people whilst you're off. But also life happens. You could decide that you want to start a family, and then potentially there's fertility or health issues, or something else happens in your life that can put a spanner in works, or goodness knows, another pandemic. I think that's the one thing we can hopefully take away from COVID, is that life will completely spin on a dial for all of us, and can do at any point. So there's benefits, there's pros and cons as well to anything, but certainly if you're at early stage, I'm as a clinician, I know starting my PhD, I was a bit older than other students, but I took my maternity leave during my PhD, and that was, from a university point of view, it just stopped the clock, and then I came back and started the clock again. So it was, from that point of view, very relatively straightforward, and it's all the other things that have been a bit more complicated. So certainly don't think that being early in your career is a reason to delay.
No, not at all. So let me try and recap on some of the kind of takeaways here. I think if you have noticed that you're going to take a career break, there are definitely, from what we heard from Claire, there are definitely things you can do to help set the scene for your return, if you like. You can, well, first of all, I think it's important that if you're going to plan ahead is to understand exactly where you stand. Go away, have a look at the university's rules and policies on career breaks, to have a look and talk to every funder I know on this topic, particularly the smaller ones like Alzheimer's Research UK or Alzheimer's Society, or this, where you're dealing with people, not the UKRI, where you're dealing with some faceless entity. That they're used to this. So talk to them if you're planning ahead. Ask what your entitlement is, what happens to your grants if you're doing this, and lay those breadcrumbs. I think Claire very nicely put to prepare for your return. When you come back, be kind to yourself. Don't expect yourself to get back up to 100% running from day one. If you've got a support network around you, don't be afraid to draw upon that. And if you haven't, I guess we haven't really got a lot of tips for those people that haven't, other than it's going to be tough. There's no doubt about that. Particularly if it's in return to working, if you're returning with after starting a family. I guess if you're returning after a period of ill health or caring, is to draw on those networks of people around you, on your colleagues, on support networks, communities like ours, where you know that you're going to find a friendly ear and somebody to talk to. I think also as well, we haven't talked about this, but the idea that you could potentially, we've talked a lot. We talk about mentoring quite a lot, and I quite like this idea of that you keep your mentoring dynamic, that you bring people in and move people out depending on what it is you want from them. Be quite selfish in that respect. And so if you can find a mentor that's gone through this, that's good, and it's not the mentor you've got now, go out and seek somebody else to add to them or to swap them out. Don't swap them, just enhance your existing mentorship arrangements. What else did you talk about? Exercise. Good for keeping your head strong. Be flexible about how you might reorganize your days around work, and most of all, flexibility. Don't beat yourself up. Just be prepared. Family and life comes first, right? It might not feel that way. Is there anything I've missed? Is there any top to give me? We're kind of out of time now, and we're not going to get to the chat today because there's nobody there to chat to anyway. But is there anything to add?
The only thing I would like to add is talk to your supervisor, to your boss. There's sometimes more understanding than people would expect, even, and they will support you, because at the end of the day, a happy employee is a good employee. So what they want is for you to be happy so you can produce. There's no reason having a stressed individual running around and, having mental health problems. So I think this is my...
And if you've got one of those terrible old school bosses, which we hope don't exist, but we know they still do, that, creeping away in the corridors of academia are still certain people that would frown upon hiring women because they're going to go off on leave, or are disappointed when you go, and find a new job. Just get rid of them. Don't work for people like that, and call them out about it as well. It's easier said than done, but approach us. We'll talk to Loukia, talk to Claire, share your experiences. We're all available here in the community, and we'd love to provide whatever help we can. Thank you so much. I think we've kind of done this topic now. That was brilliant, and I'm really pleased that you've both been so successful in navigating that experience of returning to work. So next... No, thank you. Next time on the Salon, we're going to be back in a week's time, and we've got what else? I already had this lined up. Here we are. So we've got a few more sessions. With tomorrow in the community, I'm going to be talking Thursday in the community, we're talking to somebody who's going to be skating 1,000 kilometers across Europe, and stopping off to talk about their research findings along the way between the Netherlands and Geneva. And they're going to be live streaming onto our YouTube channel every day and taking a different kind of career break. They've just finished they've just submitted. They've got a gap now before their Viva, and they're going to use that time to roller skate through Europe. So we're going to have a chat about that. And then on Friday, we're going to have some of the iStar ambassadors here to talk about the AIC plenaries from a couple of weeks ago. And then we're back in the Salon next Wednesday, the 28th of August, to talk about acing job interviews. But thank you very much, Claire and Loukia. You were amazing. I hope to see you again. I owe you both a drink for taking time out to join us.
We'll hold you to that.
Thank you for having us.
And I'll look forward to seeing you all in the Salon again. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.